You ready? You ready? CNET ready?
Recording in progress.
All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, September 6, 2022. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now I'll ask Centrise, our manager, to please give us some instructions on participating remotely.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the public, the board, and staff for joining us this evening for the September 6th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend online using the Zoom platform, and the main meeting room is available for members of the public to attend in person. If you are joining the Zoom meeting tonight and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using Zoom platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for the question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. Please indicate your name, please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Denetti. Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, up next is citizens' input for any items not on the agenda. Is there anyone with citizens' input? Seeing none, we'll move to approval of the minutes. There are 4 sets of minutes. Before we take a motion, were there any questions, comments, corrections?
Yes. August 10th special meeting minutes. The candidate mentioned in section 3, different name from, I believe they meant, see it here, would have been for the second special meeting. So was Tip Stama interviewed or Mr. Miller? Because it mentions Tip was in the meeting, Mr. Stama was in the meeting, but Mr. Miller was interviewed. So,
Thank you, we can make that correction.
yep, just pointing that out.
Thanks. Any others?
Of all those minutes,
Yeah, I had one
Okay.
other thing. Go ahead.
for the August 16th regular meeting, I was just gonna point out that my wife, Kara Cavallo, was excluded from the attendance, but she was present. And the one of the attendees other attendees I know, Erica Cobble doesn't have the C in her name, so,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
The one thing I had noted is the second August 10th set of minutes. I think the term that was approved is through 2023, and I think it said 22, December 31st, 22.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve those 4 sets of meeting minutes.
This is Patty. Motion to approve the meeting minutes as listed in the agenda with the corrections that we discussed.
This is Tiara, second that.
Okay, any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, up next are authorities, boards, and commissions reports, and we have a report for the University Area Joint Authority from Mr. Mark Kunkel.
Thank you, and good evening, board members. You have a copy of the quarterly status report for September of 2022, I believe, in your packet. I want to make sure that we welcomed Wes Glebe to the University Area Joint Authority Board as an appointment of the second member from Ferguson Township. And I see that Wes has joined us virtually this evening. Just a couple of highlights with regard to the Scott Road Pump Station replacement. This is located in Ferguson Township, down here at the intersection of Scott Road and Route 4526. The force main has been completed by UAJA personnel. The installation is nearing completion, although as with many things, electrical components have been delayed by the manufacturer, and this has pushed the project back to be operational in late September of this month, so this year. Another project that is of interest, I believe, is the anaerobic digester and sledge dryer. This is going to replace the composting facility at the plant. So after this year, compost will not be available at UAJA for sale. This process is going to take biodegradable items and sludge from both UAJA, Bellefonte, and Tyrone, as well as we're in discussions currently with the Center Region Recycling and Refuse Authority to obtain their organics. The project is been in design and should be out to bid sometime in next month in 2022. It's about a 1.5-year project to be completed. I might note too that the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act appears to have created an opportunity to receive tax credits. So private entities are going to be able to buy tax credits on this project, and that'll be a partial rebate on the cost of the project. I'm pretty excited about this project because it not only has a cost savings by replacing the composting process, but the biogas that will be produced, we'll be able to market that on the market and sell that. So it'd be another revenue source to the authority and help to keep our rates down. We've had a rate subcommittee that was appointed in 2021. We completed our work earlier this spring. We're looking at the possibility of reviewing how the EDUs are allocated to various uses across the authority service area, as well as the possibility of moving to a hybrid type of billing system. There would be a combination of EDUs and volumetric. That would require that we get a consultant, obviously, to take a look at that, but it's something we're considering and possibly engaging the consultant early next year. And finally, of interest, I think, is that, as you know, there's a solar array at the UAJA plant, produces, I believe, 5 megawatts of electrical power on a good sunny day. But we've always had concerns about how we're going to maintain the grass, and so we've got a herd of sheep now that are, we've contracted with a local farmer, and so they're doing a great job out there at a reduced cost. And last but not least, something that the UAJA customers ought to be aware of, that we haven't had a rate increase, I believe, in 9 years now. There's a good possibility that there may be a rate increase in 2023, given the operational cost that we've incurred over the last nearly a decade. And so it's something that we'll be taking a look at for the 2023 budget year. If there's any questions on any of the projects or the report, I'll be glad to try and answer these.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming tonight, and also thank you, Wes Glebe, for being the second representation from Ferguson Township on this authority. That's really greatly appreciated. Were there any questions? Thanks for noting that tax credit that should be available for, given that the bill that was just passed. Thanks for pointing that out. And then my question had been maintenance of the sheep and who's caretaking for them. So you answered that. So is that a farm adjacent to UAJ?
I'm not sure exactly where the sheep have come from, but the farmer obviously takes care of them. I believe he rotates them
How
in
about
and
that?
out, and, you know, it's a contracted service, but much less expensive than sending personnel and equipment out there.
It's a contracted service. That's great. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we have special reports and acknowledgements. Our first report is under the Township and Fiscal Responsibility. It's a presentation on COG Facilities intermunicipal agreement with COG Executive Director Eric Nuremberg.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a little bit of background on the COG building, especially for the newer members of the board. I think this will be helpful. In 2001, the COG building was developed, and the land that the COG building sits on was purchased and is owned by the COG. The development of the building, however, was the product of a joint agreement of all of the COG municipalities, and the municipalities are the owners of the building. The building is a shared asset for the 6 municipalities, and each month, each quarter, the COG is paying rent back to the member municipalities. And that dates back, as I said, to 2001. And in 2018, the COG Facilities Committee started looking at, well, what happens when? It's starting to look into the future for when the lease agreement for the COG building expires, and all of the lease payments related to the debt that was issued for the building, when all of those payments are made and the debt is paid off, what will happen to the COG building? Because the lease arrangement, the intermunicipal agreement, is silent on what happens to the building at that time. So after a lot of research and consultation between the Facilities Committee and others, including meetings with the municipal managers and consultation with the COG solicitor, a year ago, the Facilities Committee and Executive Committee in the General Forum recommended and requested staff work with the solicitor to develop an agreement or an amendment to the agreement that would transfer the building at the end of the lease period from the ownership of the municipalities to the COG itself. And remember, the municipalities are the COG, so it really is transferring the asset off the books of the municipalities onto the ownership of the COG, but still the municipalities control the decisions made regarding the COG building. So those documents were prepared and reviewed by the Facilities Committee in the spring, and it was recommended that these move forward for approval by the General Forum in each of the municipalities. And basically what was presented, this background was presented to the General Forum in July, and we have an amendment to the intermunicipal agreement that will, as I said, require each of the municipalities to approve. And then once that is executed at the end of the lease period in May of 2028, the building will become the COG's, but under the Articles of Agreement, all of the municipalities have to agree for any issuance of debt or to sell or purchase assets like land or buildings. So there would still need to be an approval process that requires unanimous decisions to be made in 2028 or beyond regarding the future of the building. But having made that decision and made it clear as to who owns the building and who owns the land at the end of that period, the Facilities Committee is very interested in getting underway with some long-range facility planning. And when I was with you several weeks ago talking about the program plan, that was one of the items that we want to begin working on with the Facilities Committee in the near future is to start developing a longer-range facilities plan so that we are able to better map out what we want to do with facilities to meet the needs of the various COG agencies, especially because we have a number of COG agencies that are utilizing leased space, and that leased space is less advantageous to the COG in the long term than having owned properties. So bottom line, the request that will be presented again to the General Forum in September is to have a unit vote to approve this amendment to the intermunicipal agreement, and that will require action of each municipality to ratify, and that could be a simple vote at the time that the unit vote takes place, or a subsequent motion and amendment, but that will be a question for each of the municipalities' solicitors to help answer. Excuse me, one of the things that is a question that has come up is about the finances behind all of this. And it's important to note that right now, as I said, each month the COG pays, or each quarter, the COG pays rent to the municipalities, some for the COG building, and there are two agencies in COG administration in the building. We have code administration that occupies the entire first floor, and the second floor has planning and COG administration. So municipal members such as Ferguson support administration, they support planning through their municipal support, and so in effect you're paying, as part of your support to those agencies, money that will go into helping support the COG building, and then we're paying back through the COG to the municipalities for that building. So you're moving money from one pocket to another for that, at least in terms of administration and the Center Region Planning. However, Center Region Code is supported by fees and charges, and so that agency helps support the operations of the building through the revenue that's generated by fees and permits and things like that. Analysis was done by staff a while back, and on average, it's forecasted that the rent that would be paid by Center Region Code Administration for occupancy in the building will cover most, if not all, of the regular costs and expenses for running and operating the building. And so if that continues to stay true, once we move past that lease period, this would be a kind of a revenue neutral situation for the municipalities. You would no longer be paying to support planning's occupation of the building or administration's occupation of the building, code and refuse and recycling that also has a small piece of the building would be covering the expenses of the operation of the building. So that's the background, and again, the question to be presented to the General Forum for a unit vote, presumably later this month, will be to vote on that. And so that's the direction that the Executive Committee gave in August, was to move forward with that, and we'll be presenting information to the municipalities that had requested a visit like this. Several of the municipalities have already discussed this, and I think we're visiting with the borough and Harris Township next week. So be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much. A very thorough overview of that. Any questions?
Just one, sorry.
Sure.
It's 2028, right?
Correct,
Is that-
May of 2028. And for Jeremy's benefit, there was some material that was distributed after the July General Forum meeting that you didn't get at that point, so we'll send you that email so you'll have all of these documents handy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very helpful. All right. Well,
I have one
Sure.
more
oh,
question.
yes,
Sorry,
please,
just
that's all right.
still understanding COG and everything. I guess my question is, why is this necessary if you're saying that it's kind of the same thing, the municipalities, the COG, the transfer, they'll still be doing this? I guess I'm kind of confused on what the necessity
It's essentially cleaning up some of the records of who owns what, because, you know, the COG, it's unusual for in Center County at least, for land to be owned by one entity and the building that sits on the property to be owned by another.
Okay,
And the intent, as I mentioned, is for the Facilities Committee to be planning assets and facility needs for many years into the future. And by knowing for sure how the building and this asset will be owned, the committee will be better able to plan should the building be kept and used as a home for one or more agencies, should it be sold and a different building be developed, a different site. We have a number of potential options, and this gives us a little bit more certainty as to how clearly this will be defined when we do that planning.
and did you say this needed to be a majority vote or a unanimous vote?
It would need to be unanimous for all
Okay.
6 member communities.
Okay, and since it needed to be unanimous in the 2029, 2030, one of the municipalities couldn't like pull out and change their mind, that'll be,
No, the decision we're asking for can be made anytime between now and 2028,
got it.
but the intent is to hopefully do this as soon as possible, because we started this process several years ago and kind of had to restart the process this year with so many new elected officials that came on board. We wanted to make sure you were all educated and able to make a decision before you know, maybe other folks leave office, come in, and it becomes one of those re-education steps again. And in making a decision this year, the planning can move forward knowing at least the land and the building are under common ownership.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anything else? No.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, up next we have the Center Region Planning Agency presentation on the regional growth boundary and sewer service area to review and inform on Act 537, and we'll welcome Jim May for this item.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a long time since I've been in this building, so it's good to see you all in person. I'd like to just take a few minutes to go over a document that we recently completed regarding the regional growth boundary and sewer service area. This is simply put, a line that all municipalities in the center region have drawn, 2 lines actually, a sewer service area where public sewer can be, and then a regional growth boundary where we want to direct most of the urban development in the region. So many, many years ago, the region decided to do this as a way to manage growth. And that came as a result of a couple of things. One was we do a regional comprehensive plan, so the 6 municipalities that participate in that. But to implement that comprehensive plan, each municipality adopts their own ordinances. So the COG has no authority to do that, so you have to rely on your municipal partners to achieve your goals as a community. For example, groundwater protection is a big issue in the region. Everybody drinks the water here, but there aren't wells in every municipality, so there's a shared interest in protecting them. There's a shared interest in preserving the agricultural heritage of the region. So, and you've done that in a great way in Ferguson Township. You probably, maybe 20% of this township is developed. Western Ferguson is prime agricultural land. That's partly due to the growth boundary, but it's also a lot to do with the zoning that a previous board put out there to do 1 dwelling unit per 50 acres. So those farmers really preserved that land. There are other things that the growth boundary and sewer service area does. It allows us to develop more intensely inside the growth boundary, where we can support transit. We can use existing infrastructure. We don't have to build new roads, don't have to extend public water and sewer to other places in the community. It gives all the municipalities, as I mentioned, a voice in protecting shared resources in the region. And it also gives people housing choice. You can live in a very urban environment. You can live in a rural area, and you can drive to campus or downtown to your job in just about 20 minutes from anywhere in the region. So there's housing choice as well. I wanted to go over a little bit of the timeline that's in here too, because this was really a growth management system that evolved over a long period of time. In 1990, we did the first regional comprehensive plan, and that had primary growth areas where the region wanted to direct growth. But there was no agreement among the municipalities how to do that, so we relied on a policy document at the COG level, basically, to do that. And then coming in the 2000 comprehensive plan, the region actually had us put a line on a map that said this is the growth boundary, and inside this growth boundary is where we want to grow, and if you want to rezone for higher density outside that line, you had to go through a process where all the municipalities had to agree, yes, we need to grow there. So that really came to an effect in 2000. Unfortunately, they didn't come up with a process on how to do that until Geisinger, oddly enough, filed a rezoning application in Patton Township. And then people said, well, we have this agreement that we're all going to grow where we want to grow, but we don't have a process to do it. So put Geisinger on hold for a little bit, went through kind of an evaluation of 26 properties in the region. And then in 2006, the Regional Growth Boundary Sewer Service Area Implementation Agreement was signed. And that's a formal agreement that tells the applicant what they need to do if they want to expand the growth boundary. All the municipalities agreed on that process, so you now have a formal process if you want to expand, how that can be done. So that's very, very important. The other thing that's in here is a little bit about how wastewater is accommodated in the region. Inside the growth boundary and sewer service area, we have the UAJA. And we also, Penn State has its own wastewater treatment plant, so they serve campus and just a tiny bit of the College Heights neighborhood that falls downhill to their system. So then outside the growth boundary, we have what's called a surge management area. And outside there, if you have your own individual on-lot septic system, you're required to have a regular inspection and pumping cycle that's either administered through our code agency at COG or the municipal storage enforcement officer. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that we always have enough vacant land inside the growth boundary sewer service area to accommodate growth. So every 5 years, we prepare what we call a regional development capacity report. That tells us if we have enough land inside the growth boundary to support growth, population growth for the next 20 years, because we always want to stay ahead of that. So it's important that we do that. And some people, we have an affordable housing problem, so we get a lot of questions about, well, if we just got a little bit bigger, would we have more affordable housing? The answer is quite frankly no, unless you have affordable housing policies that are going to require people to do affordable housing. There's no guarantee if you expand the growth boundary, housing is going to cost any less without the housing policies to follow up behind that. So we wanted to get this out in front of people in the region because we don't amend the growth boundary very often. And for people like you who are sitting on governing bodies, it's important that you have the background on this, why we do it, and why it's important. Because we haven't done an amendment since 2014, I believe it was. So I know some of you have never seen this and probably never heard of it, but it is really one of the biggest tools we have to manage growth in our region. So I encourage you to take a look at this over the next couple of months if you have a chance. The next time we have a request come out, we'll make sure we get it to everybody in advance so you can freshen up yourself. We're going to be posting this on our social media platforms and on our webpage in the coming weeks, so it'll be out there for you and the rest of the folks in the region to see. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or address concerns that anyone might have.
Thanks so much, Jim.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions for Jim? Jim, I just had one. Could you just expand a little bit on the sewer
sewage management area. So that's outside the sewer service area, but not septic. Did I hear that correct?
It is
Okay.
septic. The surge
That is
management, yeah,
okay.
surge management program is for individual on-lot septic systems. That's where, part of, I didn't mention the Act 537 plan, but that's our surge management plan. Part of that is the UAJ operations, and part of it is outside the growth boundary. DEP required us to come up with a system to make sure that individual on-lot septic systems were working properly, so they're inspected and pumped on a regular basis.
Okay, so that's just the term for septic outside the
Yes.
sewer. Okay, got
Surge
it.
management
Okay,
program. Yep.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Patty?
I do have a
Yeah,
question
yeah.
following up on that. So as a region, do we have like, is there a lot size that is required for on-site septic? I'm not even sure I'm using. the
1
term.
acre, yeah, 1 acre minimum, yeah.
1 acre. And is that throughout the region, the
Yeah.
COG region?
Mhm.
All right, any other questions for Jim? Well, thanks so much. I'll touch on a little bit of what Jim just went over when I report on the Lucy Committee meeting. Thanks for introducing that.
Great.
All right. Okay. Before we move to COG and regional committee reports, I want to acknowledge that a member of the public who had wished to give citizens input had arrived following that period after we closed the citizens input time. So I want to look for consent to reopen the citizens input time to allow this member of the public to speak for a couple of minutes on their item.
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Okay, so if there's agreement on that, we will reopen citizens' input for items not on the agenda and welcome anyone who has comment to please come to the podium and just give us your name and your township of residence.
I appreciate you allowing me this courtesy. My name's Council Ned. I'm the Ferguson Township Constable, and I'm also the pastor of St. Albans Anglican Church in Pine Grove Mills, and I'm a resident of Pine Grove Mills. As a constable, I get to see sort of wide cross sections of the population, this community and other surrounding communities. Last week, or it might have been the week before, I was going to serve a warrant for someone that had served a warrant before. The first time I went to that place, it didn't jump out at me as horribly as it jumped out at me this most recent time. May I share these documents with?
Is that all right?
They're photographs.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine, thanks.
The chair first, or? Okay, so I went to serve a warrant on a defendant. They were living at this trailer park. I don't necessarily want to say the name right now, because again, I don't want to cause any embarrassment whatsoever to the people that live in this community. I just don't want to cause any personal embarrassment to anybody. But I've been in lots of trailer parks throughout this region. I've been in some of the worst trailer parks, probably in all of the surrounding counties, and this was the worst thing I'd seen. I was there before, maybe about 18 months ago, and it wasn't this bad. It was about a 90-degree day. I got out of the car, and you're hit with the smell of ammonia from all of the feral cats running around in the area. The first packet are some of the photos that I took. I went back and took photos so that I could show the supervisors what exactly is going on here. And there were some worse photos. I could have taken some photos of some more decrepit properties that are actually occupied, but there's a gentleman there who lived in one of those trailers. And, you know, my big thing is I don't want to cause anybody in personal embarrassment, so I didn't take pictures of him or his house or the 20 cats that he was feeding at the moment. When I was there, I asked somebody, when I got back from there, I asked somebody about why aren't these places condemned? And the response that I got back was that it would cost too much to rehouse them. So, you know, I live in Pine Grove Mills. If my neighbor, and he routinely does not cut his grass very often, somebody comes by, puts a thing on his door that says, you need to cut your grass. I'm guessing that doesn't happen out there at this particular neighborhood. And so I was just curious as to like, how does this happen here in Happy Valley? Where, you know, I understand we have people in the margins of society here, but this was extreme and excessive, and I just don't know how people can live like this. Especially, you know, weather's getting cooler now, as we all know. Winter's going to be here quickly. So what I did, I called the owner of the property. I tracked him down because I wanted to find out if this particular individual that I was looking for lived at this property. And the answer that he gave me, the second stack of photos there is the owner's house. And you can see, I took a picture of his house, beautiful home. Again, I could tell you where it is later, but I don't want to say where it is. But I took a picture of his home, and the second building is his garage. He's got a 3-car garage with antique racing cars in there. They're either Ferraris or Jaguars. But I asked him, I said, does so-and-so live at this address? And he said, to be honest, I don't know who lives there as long as I get my rent checks. And it was just disturbing. You see one of the photos there, the house doesn't have a door. There's a tarp that comes over it. And I know somebody's living in there. The other neighbors told me that somebody lives in that house. And the first time I was there, the lights were off. The second time I went back and took those photos that you see, the lights were on. So clearly somebody has been going in and out of that property. And I just wanted to bring it to the supervisor's attention. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks so much. Thanks for attending. Thanks for bringing the item to the board.
And thank you.
Oh, of course. And I know we have your contact information, so we'll be able to follow up after the meeting with that. Thanks very much again, and thanks to the board for allowing us to reopen citizens' input. Okay, so we can move now to COG and regional committee reports. Up first is the executive committee. I believe we won't have a report on that, and also we've had general forums since then, so all those items would have been seen. Next is joint finance and facilities committee meeting. I don't know if Patty, you had anything you wanted to share on that?
Other than it was a lively discussion, sorry, I didn't write up a report. I should have gotten with Laura to see which one of us would have written a report. Maybe we can have a report for you next time. It was a lively discussion. What sticks in my mind most was about the food truck, the purchase of the food truck, and moving that forward to the general forum, which we voted on. And gosh, that's about what I really remember.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I believe that was prior to the general forum too, so.
Yes.
We've all gone over that. Okay, Parks and Rec Governance Committee. I think the agenda was in there, had a good explanation of that. And Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee. We went over a lot of what Jim presented tonight. So really a streamlined way of viewing the regional growth boundary and sewer service area and the processes to expand those. So I thought CRPA staff did a great job in creating these visuals that'll get posted online to really see how the process works. We then also discussed renewing the, and I'll get this wording incorrect, but the agreement on that. So I'll bring back at a future meeting some things for the board to consider as far as processes. So one example I'll give is previously, I think up to 2018, there was a process by which any municipality could expand the regional growth boundary within their municipality by 60 EDUs and 12 acres within a 5-year period. So a total of that within a 5-year period. And so that agreement has expired. So one thing we'll be asked to consider is, do we want to renew that? You know, pros and cons, I suppose, but so something we'll discuss in the future. I think that was about it. And we were looking at an alternate date for the October 6th meeting because there are so many conflicting meetings and activities going on that day. So I do believe we have a new date for that meeting that will be posted on the COG website. And I know Patty was going to sit in for that. So I guess you won't need to. I'll be able to attend that now, so.
Awesome. Okay.
Any questions on Land Use Committee? Okay, so we'll move to staff reports. Up first, Township Manager's report. Anything you wanted to highlight on that?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions for the manager, for the Public Works Director, or Planning and Zoning Director on their reports?
Not on their reports, but one of the things, is Jenna on? Sorry.
She is.
Oh. Jenna, I just wanted to ask, where are the parking spaces for the spin bikes in Ferguson Township? Is there a whole list of them? Because I don't feel like downloading the app, and I just wanted to.
Yes, there is well, there's not a list, there's a map. We have public and private points. So it's safe to say that all of the Ferguson Township parks are a point.
Okay.
Ferguson Township building is, the COG building. CRPR just joined on as well over on Sandy. And then the private ones we're kind of working on as we go. So there are a few out there right now, to name a couple. The Remax at the corner of Martin and Blue Course is one. We just got an approval for one of the dentist offices on Science Park as one of them as well. So what we're trying to do is, what Spin provided us was their app data on anytime someone opened the app looking for a bike in Ferguson Township prior to us rolling out the program. And that's really how we figured out where to stick these points. And now we're kind of watching and waiting to see with the students back how that changes.
Okay, thank you. No, I just, because I had sort of went on this chase to learn more about the spins, because I thought some were abandoned, but in fact they weren't. They were actually in a parking space. And I just think it's really cool. So thank you. I just didn't want to download the app, so.
Yeah, here, I think I have relatively the most updated map, I think. So you can see relatively throughout, and Patton Township is also signing on to the program as well. So we're kind of coordinating to make sure that all these areas are being covered. And then these are just the parking points. They also have a geographic boundary where the bikes cannot go beyond. So it's pretty much the regional growth boundary. What Jim was just discussing is really our boundary for the spin bikes as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
That's interesting. I wonder if there's been thought to expand that beyond the regional growth boundary, 'cause where
We need to come
There's
up with a process.
more limited, we do. Where there's more limited bus service, I think that might be helpful. Okay, well, thank you for that. The only question I had was, I guess for the manager and public works director regarding farm exemptions for stormwater. That those communications got out about renewing that filing for the exemption to those active farms, and are you, do we need to do anything else about that? Are you encouraged by the response?
Madam Chair, we have not, I personally have not checked the response rate
Okay.
since we did the mailing. We did the mailing approximately 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, thank
Not-
you.
yeah.
Thanks for doing that, okay.
Absolutely.
I see Mr. Modricker, I don't know if you wanted to comment.
I do know that some have received it, and we are getting applications, and they're being processed by the finance director. That's the way that resolution was written. So, yeah, we're getting inquiries, not necessarily specific to the partial ag exemption, but just credits and exemptions in general. And Aaron Jolin, our stormwater engineer, is doing, I think, a pretty good job responding to those in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we're in good shape right now.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions on those reports? And if not, we'll move to unfinished business. Up first is discussion and authorization of a public hearing on an ordinance to amend Chapter 27 zoning, Section 710 wireless communication facilities in accordance with Act 50, and I'll turn this over to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll actually turn this over to Jenna. Jenna and I worked with the solicitor on this, but I would like to credit Jenna for a great deal of the work and time that was invested to return these comments back to you with solicitor review and approval. Jenna?
Thank you. All right, so the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, Act 50, as we will refer to it from here on out because it's a very long name. So that was signed into law June 30th, 2021, and was drafted in unison with Pennsylvania Municipal League and telecommunication providers. Legislation is heralded as one of the most collaborative and government-friendly set of regulations for small cell service providers in the nation. It provides for fair and equitable treatment of small wireless facilities and comprehensive protections for the municipality to ensure proper maintenance of the public rights of ways. At a regular meeting held on September 20th, 2021, the Board of Supervisors authorized staff to prepare an amendment to the Wireless Communications Facilities Ordinance in the wake of the Act 50 amendment. Provided in the agenda is a draft ordinance amendment to 27710 Wireless Communications Facilities, 271102 definitions within zoning, and then the establishment of Chapter 21 Streets and Sidewalks, Part 6, non-tower based or small cell wireless communication facilities in the right-of-way. So the board last reviewed these amendments at the April 12th work session, and our solicitor has reviewed those questions and comments that we had as outstanding from that work session. And in front of you in the agenda is the result of that. So what I can say, the biggest recommendation that came forward is because of the Act 50 requirements for these small cell wirelesses, they have to be permitted in all zoning districts. It kind of removed this from the zoning ordinance. And it's really a right-of-way issue. We have to permit these types of facilities in all zoning districts. So with that, the recommendation was to remove any mention of the small cell wireless in zoning. So that's really what you're seeing in the Chapter 27 amendment, removal of any reference to facilities in the right-of-way. Zoning will maintain the macro site requirements, so the big monopoles, land development, etc. And then the small wireless communication facilities, that would be put into Chapter 21, Streets and Sidewalks, for the right-of-way requirements of these types of facilities. So I would say that is probably the biggest change from the April meeting. Otherwise, I think it was updating the definitions and ensuring that all of the updated definitions are found in zoning and now established in Chapter 21 as well. And that was pretty much all of it. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have, go through each chapter. It's really up to the chair.
Thanks so much for the introduction. Let's start. We have a recommended motion, so let's start with that if somebody's comfortable moving that.
I'll move that the Board of Supervisors authorizes the ordinance amendment for a public hearing.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And discussion, we can start with Tiara. If you have any comments or questions.
So I don't, no, I'll say no at the moment, and maybe if you guys have something.
Absolutely. Jeremy, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, but I would say, as a former member of the Planning Commission that worked with the Planning Commission on this, it was a very good collaborative discussion, and they did very well putting this together and bringing this to us.
Thank you. Anything?
No questions.
Jenna, I think you already answered mine, so my question was just about the incorporation of the sidewalk ordinance, so I think you've answered that, so, so I didn't have anything else. Is there anything else staff wanted to share on that? Okay, and if not, we have, and this is a voice vote.
Actually, this is a roll call, Madam Chair, or excuse me, I apologize. This is a voice vote. This is authorization of a public hearing to amend the ordinance. Sorry for the confusion.
No problem at all. I shouldn't have asked because I had it. I threw us off. That was me. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we have the consent agenda with a number of items for approval and the July Treasurer's Report for acceptance.
This is Patty. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented in the agenda.
This is Tier, I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Up next, we have a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the chairwoman and secretary to execute and accept easement agreements between the township and claimants 1 through 11 of contract 2018 C20 Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project. And I will turn this over to Dave Modricker.
Evening. As part of the Park Hills Drainage Improvement Project, there are 11 parcels that are affected, requiring the acquisition of either stormwater easement or temporary construction easement. So the resolution in front of you authorizes the chairwoman and secretary to accept these easement agreements. It allows the solicitor and the public works director to negotiate the agreements. Appraisals have been performed, and offers of just compensation have been sent out to the claimants. In the event that we are not able to reach an amicable agreement, the resolution further states that the township may proceed with condemnation action against property owners that permit the township to acquire the easements that are necessary for the project. The recommended motion is that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the chairwoman and secretary to execute and accept easement agreements between the township and claimants 1 through 11 that are listed in the exhibit necessary to move forward with contract 2018 C20, the Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project.
Thanks very much. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing to any comment on this item, either in the room or online. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. There is a recommended motion in the agenda, if someone would care to move that.
This is Patty. I move that I'm going to use some of our parliamentary training. I move that we adopt the recommended motion listed in the agenda as read by Dave Modricker.
Thank you.
And I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? I'll go to Patty first. If you had anything.
No, just that I'm so happy we're here at this point now.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, and this is a roll call vote.
That is correct. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2022-20. Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, up next we have a request for Act 537 special study. And I will turn this over to Jenna Wargo.
Thank you. In 2005, 2006, College, Ferguson, Half Moon, and Patton Townships and State College Borough work cooperatively to update Center Region Act 537 Sewage Facilities Plan. To complete this plan update, the 6 municipalities worked with CRPA, HRG, and UAJA to develop a coordinated plan to guide future sewage facility decisions in the community. One of the most important components of the Act 537 plan is the delineation of an updated regional growth boundary and the sewer service area. So these two, regional growth boundary, I will call it RGB, and sewer service area, SSA, those two boundaries identify areas of the community where public sewer service will be provided in the future by UAJA's sewage system. So this area is coordinated with the regional growth boundary as identified in our comprehensive regional plan to ensure the coordination between our sewage facility and our land use planning efforts. So they are the same boundary, and it's like that for a reason. So included in the agenda is an email from Armin Sahakian requesting to conduct an Act 537 special study to run a gravity-fed sewer line outside the SSA and regional growth boundary and feed into the Scott Road pump station. So Mr. Sahakian has an approved subdivision plan from 2003, and that included review and approval for the construction of a pump station that would serve the single-family residential homes in his subdivision plan. And that pump station would feed into the Scott Road pump station via Rosemont Drive and through State Route 45, which is all within the regional growth boundary and the sewer service area. So tonight the board is being asked to consider Mr. Sahakian's request to conduct a special study to amend the Center Region Act 537 plan. In doing so, approval from 5 of the 6 municipalities in the Center Region would be required to conduct this special study. And although it is more cost effective to install and maintain a gravity-fed sewer line outside the regional growth boundary, the request by the applicant is opposing the public policy of the regional growth boundary and the sewer service area. So the goal of this is to keep the infrastructure within the boundaries as identified. And I will share the area where we are talking about. It is within Pine Grove Mill, which is also in the regional growth boundary. So this is the remaining portion of Mr. Sahakian's subdivision plan. And this proposed pump station, this has been reviewed and approved by DEP. And the goal of this is to serve this entire subdivision. And it would be pumped down Rosemont and then 245 over to Scott Road pump station. And what Mr. Sahakian is requesting is to do a gravity-fed sewer line, this green line here, outside the regional growth boundary and to Scott Road pump station. So if the board has any questions about the request, I've included in the agenda Mr. Sahakian's email, his phasing plans and subdivision plan, as well as his sewage planning module that was approved by DEP. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. I hope Jim May stayed in the room in case there are any additional ones. I can't tell.
Thanks very much for that. There's a recommended motion in the agenda if anyone would want to make that motion.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors deny Mr. Sahakian's request to run a gravity-fed sewer line outside the regional growth boundary.
This is Sierra, I second that.
Okay. Questions, comments?
So I want to go back to when did we come up with the process for this? Because his paperwork was from 2003, and there was a UAJA letter in there then, and when did this process come up?
Just for the record, Jim May with the Center Regional Planning Agency. I want to clarify that this is not a request to expand the growth boundary. It's a special study, but it's allowing a sewer line across part of the community that is not within the growth boundary. So those are two separate things, Patty.
Okay.
So the agreement that was signed in '06 was to expand the growth boundary sewer
Okay.
service area, but this is kind of, in our mind, a de facto expansion because it opens up that property to potential development. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I guess what is the alternative? Like what, if we deny it, then what will Mr., I don't want to mispronounce the name, do? Sahaki, yeah.
Denial of his request, still, he has his approved, planning sewage module from DEP back when his original subdivision plan was approved. So all of those houses in that subdivision would still be, provided sewer, and he would have to build that pump station in order to serve them. So to build a pump station, it is very expensive, and it is very expensive to maintain in the long run. And the sewer line that is gravity fed is a cheaper option. However, it is in opposition to our policies that we have in place.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Jenna. I thought that the map also really helped explain, because there is a plan that's already approved, and so this is just a different option that's being requested. So that this doesn't change the approvals that have already been given. So thanks for all that clarification. If there's no other discussion, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jenna. Okay. Up next, we have a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to obligate the funds received through the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Program in accordance with the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And I'll turn this over to our manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda packet is a memo that I prepared a written overview to the Board of Supervisors, an overview that summarizes the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and also gives a little bit of some information for the new supervisors to acknowledge that the Board of Supervisors at a work session held on December 7th of 2021 voted to allocate funds ARP funds, so I'll abbreviate ARP for American Rescue Plan Act, for very specific projects that are actually within the current 2022 operating budget. Earlier this year, the feds issued a statement, a final rule that was effective April 1st that provides increased flexibility to pursue a wider range of uses for ARP funds that have been allocated. Ferguson Township has received the first disbursement, and we are waiting for the second disbursement. You may recall that the board earlier this year at a regular meeting, I believe held on July 19th, the board approved the engagement of Zelenkovsky Axelrod, also referred to as ZA, to provide some guidance on compliance and reporting responsibilities that support transparency, responsibility, and equity, and the use of these resources, particularly as stated, the ARP funds. And with us this evening is Kim Stank. She's representing ZA. Her and I have had a meeting, and she's provided that guidance to me, which now is provided to you. And with the agenda, there is a recommended motion, but Ms. Stank is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments. If there's any online or in the room. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And there is a recommended motion in the agenda, if someone would like to make that motion.
This is Patty. I move that we adopt the motion as listed in our agenda.
This is Tiara, I second that.
Okay, so any comments or questions on this item? Any discussion? Seeing none. Thanks, Centuries. I thought that was really clearly laid out in the agenda, so obviously it was. No questions on it, so thanks very much for taking care of all of the technical details of this, which will really benefit the township, so much appreciated. Okay, and this is a roll call vote.
Did you open the public hearing?
I did.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, this is a roll call vote, Madam Chair, for Resolution 2022-21. Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, up next we have the IMP preliminary subdivision plan, and we will go back to Jenna Wargo.
Thank you. Included in the agenda is the IMPT preliminary subdivision plan dated July 26, 2022, last revised August 2nd, 2022. The IMPT subdivision is located along Blue Course Drive at the intersection of West College Avenue and Old Black Road. Tax parcel 24004-017A is located within the general commercial zoning district and the corridor overlay zoning district. So the applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel into two lots, one commercial lot and then one stormwater management lot. So the existing lot is 9.2 acres and it includes an existing stormwater basin on the northern portion that is serving the medical building, and I will show you an aerial shortly, as well as the townhomes in that area. So that proposed lot, the stormwater management lot, that is going to be 2.9 acres, and then lot 1, which is the main subdivision at the corner of College and Blue Course, that would be 6.3 acres when the subdivision is done. Sidewalks are to be added along Blue Course Drive and West College Avenue, connecting to the existing sidewalks north of the property. And staff has reviewed the preliminary subdivision plan and is recommending conditional approval subject to the outstanding comments as described in my memorandum dated August 31st, 2021. Let me get an aerial up here. We know what we're looking at. All right. So this is the lot. Right now we're at the corner here, Blue Course and College, Waffle Shop right here. We have golf course up here. So this lot is a triangle of sorts. So it is this whole area. And what the applicant is proposing is to subdivide essentially where this curb cut is. So this is currently the stormwater management lot for this Mountain Indian Health Medical Building, as well as the townhomes located on Old Gatesburg Road. So that will stay, still maintaining their stormwater. The applicant is currently working with the township engineer on a TIS and stormwater for this lot and their proposed construction for their future land development plan. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has on this subdivision plan.
Thanks very much. Okay, we have a recommended motion in the agenda. If someone would care to make that.
This is Tiara. I move that the Board of Supervisors conditionally approve the subdivision plan.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Okay, thanks very much. Discussion. We can start with Thierry, who made the motion.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I appreciate these sidewalks. I try to walk from Blue Course to go to Waffle Shop sometimes with my son, and it's really hard for us to navigate just trying to get down the street. So I think I appreciate it. So.
Thank you. Agreed. Any other comments? Patty or Jeremy, anything?
Nothing.
I agree with the sidewalk comments, because that will be a continuation of what is there on Blue Course, so that's great. And will give us just that little bit on West College to connect there. I guess my only I have questions that will arise in the land development phase, so nothing really on the subdivision except the road access I did want to ask about at this point. So the private road and the curb cut on so the private road off of West College, is that going to stay private or will that get turned over?
That is currently being worked out right now with the township engineer. So the right of way along this whole area is different widths depending on what property you are on. So that is not necessarily required with the subdivision plan. It will be required with land development plan, but the goal is to get a 60-foot right of way to make it a public road.
Okay.
Lisa, are you talking about the split that she showed us?
Yeah,
Okay.
both of them, yep. So the
Both,
one
okay.
that's parallel to Blue Course, which is a currently private road, and then there's the curb cut on Blue Course right now, which I assume will be a second access point to Lot 2. And that will, I mean, these are land development questions. It's hard to not ask at this point. So I'm guessing that'll just be a right turn in, right turn out there, unsignalized. So anyways, just, I guess, many comments piling up for land development, but nothing on this. I
Yeah, it
think.
was very hard for planning commission to keep their comments to the subdivision only. So
I imagine.
understood.
I imagine. We haven't seen anything right here
Yes.
on that. So any other comment from the board? Any other discussion from the board? And we can take some public comment if there's some. I'd just like to ask you to state your name, your township of residence, or your relation to the project at the podium. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Tony Fructo. I'm with Pantera Engineering. We're the consulting engineer for the proponent of the project. And we just thought maybe we could expand on your questions just a little bit further. With me is Tim Bieber. Tim Bieber is project manager for Rudders. Rudders is pursuing this property for a convenience store. So we have submitted a traffic impact study to the township, to the engineer, to PennDOT for review of both those access points off of College Avenue and off of Blue Course Drive. It looks like right now the one off of Blue Course will be a signalized intersection. The one off of College Avenue will be an unsignalized intersection. As far as what the movements are of the College Avenue, we're still working on that. Also, to answer the question about the right-of-way for both the road off of Blue Course and kind of that goes across the rear of the property there next to Blaze Alexander. Over the course of many years, those properties have been changed hands and there's sort of been right-of-way designated, and at one point, I think it was supposed to be township right-of-way, but the lawyers don't even actually know exactly what it means at this point. So we're working through that process for the land development plan, but we felt like it would be better to at least get you started on what your questions are as far as just getting the piece subdivided into Rudder's hands so that they can take the next step.
Thanks very much for
Sure.
offering that. I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussion during land development.
Yes.
It's a high-use, high-visibility corner
It is.
in the township, and
It is.
so I expect a lot of discussion, but I appreciate you coming and sharing that. That really helps us get a better view of what will be in land development, so
Sure.
thanks very much.
One thing,
If you could just go to the podium, please, they can capture that on CNET. Thank you.
Tim Beaver with Rudders County Residence is York. The one thing that we are planning to do would be to build Old Block Road to township standards. Whether it is offered for dedication or not is a decision that is not just in our hands, but it would be all of the impacted properties along there that have access rights to it. So I don't know what the final answer would be, but it is something we're working with in conjunction with the township staff.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. Okay, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. If nothing else, we'll go for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we are on to the appointment of Supervisor Jeremy Thompson to Center Region Council of Governments Committees. Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the board this evening is asked to discuss the appointments to the Center Region Council of Governments, COG, and the regional committees. Further, the board will need to discuss to appoint Supervisor Thompson to COG and regional committees for the remainder of 2022. And provided with the agenda is a recommended motion suggesting that Supervisor Thompson fill the current committees that we don't have an assigned supervisor.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, there's a recommended motion in the agenda.
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Jeremy Thompson to the Climate Action Sustainability and as an alternate to Human Resources COG Committee.
This is Tiara, I second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Jeremy, for your willingness to serve on these committees. Okay, up next, appointment of Mr. Doug Miller to Ferguson Township Parks and Recreation Committee. Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and provided with the agenda is a recommended motion to appoint Mr. Doug Miller to serve on the, Mr. Douglas Workman. Mr. Doug Miller to serve on the Parks and Recreation Committee. And provided with the agenda is a recommended motion.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Doug Miller to the Ferguson Township Parks and Recreation Committee.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And thanks to Mr. Miller for serving on the Parks and Rec Committee. That's great. Up next is award of contract 2022-C3 cured in place pipelining, and we'll go to Mr. Modricker.
Hello again. Bids were open publicly for contract 2022-C3 cured in place pipelining on August 23rd. Bid opening was attended by a number of staff, advertised in the Center Daily Times, and the invitation to bid was sent to 23 different contractors. We did receive 3 bids. HydroClean LLC, $392,230. Inliner Solutions LLC, $441,115. Vortex Services LLC, $708,480. Within the packet that you have in front of you, there is a memorandum from Ryan Scanlon, Assistant Township Engineer. The engineer's estimate for the contract, as well as the budget. Let me say it a little differently. 2 of the 3 bids were within the engineer's estimate and the budget. Some of the funds come out of the TIF fund for pipes that are to be lined as part of road paving projects. Neighborhood-wide pipelining comes out of the stormwater fund. There is adequate funding in both of the Fund 20 stormwater and Fund 30 the TIF. I am recommending that the Board of Supervisors award the contract to HydroClean LLC for a total of $392,230 per their bid.
Thanks very much. And there is a recommended motion in our agenda.
This is Patty. I move that we award the contract listed in the recommended motion that's in the agenda, even though the gray highlighted thing says 2018, it actually should be 2022, C3.
And I will second that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dave, for that. Okay,
Thank
and
you.
we are on to communications to the board. Is there anything anyone has to share? I just had one thing that hasn't already been brought to the board. Some concerns about the Shingletown Road intersection at the construction area of 26 and 45. Just how difficult it is if you were, how do I describe this, on Shingletown Road, wanting to continue on Route 45 toward Pine Grove Mills, trying to go straight from maybe the Bollesburg direction to Pine Grove Mills. It's very difficult to see up to your right past the barriers where the construction is. So I know some concerns have already been addressed. I just wanted to make note that there are still concerns about the construction in that area. I'm hoping it's short-lived, as I'm hopeful that construction is moving at the predicted pace and will be done before too long, but I did want those concerns noted. I've heard it a couple of times, so I guess the other thing I wanted to note is we had a call out for volunteers for our ABCs in the township, so that went out, and also for our crossing guard that is still being sought, that a person to fill that position. So you can go to the website if anyone is interested or knows somebody interested in filling any of those roles. We have a number of calendar items. Anything that you wanted to highlight?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
And anything else for the good of the order? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
This is Patty, so moved.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.